Today, detectives say they've identified a woman who was killed and dumped in the desert back in 1971. Her name is Colleen Audrey Rice.
A small group of hunters came across a canvas sack in the desert on January 23, 1971, thinking they had discovered another man's catch. When they opened it to look inside, they were horrified to find a woman's body. Who could this woman have been, and why was she killed? Let's begin our investigation into the case of Mojave Jane Doe. The Mojave people were the area's earliest occupants in the 1860s, and it's now Arizona's second largest county. When the Great Depression arrived, Mojave County's reputation as a gold mining region began to fade. Miners and troops utilized it as a resort town, but as the industry grew, people started to leave. These days, thanks to the growing interest in the gold rush, Mojave has become a booming tourist destination as people flock to the national parks and use the region as a quick access point to the Grand Canyon, Route 66, and Hoover Dam. However, half a century ago, on January 23, 1971, Mojave County was the scene of a murder mystery that continues to haunt the sheriff's office. 3 hunters were searching for game in a remote part of Arizona's Mojave County. They came across a canvas bag in the desert with the words Deer Park written on it. The bag was loosely tied with a white cotton rope and had been left along the Hackberry gravel road in the remote desert. Assuming it was an animal carcass left behind by another group of hunters, they opened the sack to investigate. To their shock and horror, they discovered a woman's contorted body. The police were summoned and immediately sealed off the area to start their investigation. It was clear to investigators that the victim had been killed, and whoever had done so had been trying to conceal the crime. They came up empty-handed. Nowhere near the crime scene were any IDs, bags, or purses discovered. Investigators sent her body to the Mojave County Coroner's Office for a post-mortem. At the same time, they questioned the hunters about any suspicious activity in the area. It was clear from the start that the woman was a victim of homicide, because whoever killed her had made sure not to leave any incriminating clues behind and made a clean getaway. Initially, her cause of death was listed as unknown because she had no signs of blunt force trauma or gunshot wounds. There was also no signs of a health-related death, like a stroke or a heart attack, and her organs were listed as healthy. However, because she'd been stuffed into a canvas sack, it was difficult to tell if there were any ligature marks around her neck. She wore a cardigan with long sleeves, a blouse with 5 brass buttons down the front, and size 12 burnt orange stretch pants. On her feet were pixie-style black leather boots that were a size 5.5, along with bobby socks that may have been white at some point. Her hair was described as salon style, and her appearance was clean and meticulous. Her manicure was neat and consistent, but what really jumped out was a considerable dental work that she had done. Her nails were spotless. She was missing 2 molars and had a dental bridge around $2,000 in value. Despite the efforts of the investigators that looked into the case, her true identity was never revealed. The investigators published a notice in the regional newspapers and a composite sketch of the woman. However, this did not result in any potentially fruitful leads. They then turned to other identification techniques, such as interrogating customers at nearby establishments that catered to customers from the upper middle class, and also inspecting apparel businesses. In addition, they looked through airline manifests and posted an advertisement for a missing individual in dental magazines. Nevertheless, none of these efforts resulted in any concrete leads being discovered. The search for the missing individual was expanded, and the missing persons bulletins were distributed across Arizona, California, Nevada, and Utah. Even though 23 women had been reported missing during that period, none matched the description of the Mojave Jane Doe. Almost 5,000 people who had applied for hunting licenses during that particular season were questioned by investigators as part of their search for potential culprits within the hunting community. They had a theory that the murder was what's known as a mama-papa killing. They believed the culprit was an angry spouse. Nevertheless, this also did not create any positive outcomes. Despite their significant efforts, they were not successful in determining the identity of Mojave Jane Doe. She was ultimately laid to rest in the Mountain View Cemetery in Kingman, where her gravestone has the simple inscription, Jane Doe, and the date of her passing as January 29, 1971. It wasn't until 2001, 30 years later, that an investigator with the Special Investigations Unit was tasked with finding out who the Mojave Jane Doe was. The Mojave County Sheriff's Department created the SIU in 1999 to investigate, solve, and close cold cases. The Mojave Jane Doe was the oldest of almost 60 unsolved cases that year. Miller and her crew painstakingly researched like their predecessors. They studied old case files and reports. They re-interviewed witnesses to refresh their memory and possibly find new clues. They resubmitted fingerprints and rechecked dental records, but it didn't work. The case was registered in the NamUs database in November 2021, but results still needed to be found. Investigators exhausted all leads again. The Sheriff's Department updated its Facebook post on identified or missing people as part of its case review. In October 2022, Texas-based forensic genealogy organization Othram Inc. approached them 51 years after the Mojave Jane Doe was found. The company promised on Facebook to use geneticists' breakthrough DNA technology to generate a family tree from Jane Doe's DNA profile. The new technology was both pricey and time-consuming. Before that, investigators posted the composite sketch on their Facebook page, again in the hopes of finding leads, but nothing happened. Miller and her crew saw just one option. She said that genetic genealogy was the only way to identify her. The investigation team took it personally. She may have been missed as a wife, daughter, or mother. Without outcomes, an investigation lodged evidence. The Mojave Jane Doe case was their slogan to provide closure to the family and voiceless victims. Investigators chose genetic testing after praying. The sheriff's office gave $1,000 for testing. Miller noted that despite being a vast county, its population and finances were minimal. But other groups set up a donation website to raise the remaining $6,500 required to commence testing, hoping the community will open their hearts to grant the Mojave Jane Doe her dignity. DNA Solves' Dear Gladys page supported financing. The response was tremendous. In November 2022, after Mojave County Court approval, forensic-grade genome sequencing investigators created a DNA profile using modern DNA testing. This profile was then matched against ancestry websites with profiles from hundreds of people who have willingly provided their DNA samples to trace and track families worldwide. Based on Mojave Jane Doe's DNA, investigators created numerous family trees. They spent hours on the family trees, finding several distant ancestors and the closest living relatives by elimination. They found a relative willing to donate a new DNA sample. Positive results were confirmed 3 months later. Lead investigator Lori Miller got the call she was waiting for on Monday, January 23, 2023, 52 years after the Mojave Jane Doe was found. Jane Doe's name was Colleen Audrey Rice. Colleen attended Portsmouth High School, but married 15-year-old William Davis in 1946. After examining old school documents, investigators found a yearbook photo for her case file. Colleen would have died at 39. Her life was unknown. Due to Colleen's distant family, investigators found little information. Colleen had gotten distant from her family and her spouse. She showed signs of childbirth, but there was no way to find her children or verify she had any. Colleen's disappearance erased her life. The investigation into Colleen's arrival in Arizona also fizzled. When her corpse was found, Colleen was neatly groomed and healthy. Authorities sought to determine if she had changed her name to start a new life away from her family, but Kingman residents didn't remember her. WOWK-TV found Colleen's distant genealogical relative, Ellie Allen, from Colleen's mother's side lives in Ohio. Allen learned that they were linked after hearing about the case and seeing the victim's name. When he saw Rice in his mother's line, he knew they were related. Colleen left on her own, disproving the murder theory. As no missing person report was filed throughout the 50-year investigation, no one who knew her seemed interested in finding her. What was the saddest thing about today's case? It took decades to identify her, and no one even looked for her when she went missing. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe for more thrilling videos. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.